for SEO Now.
Thanks. So just quickly about me, I've been doing SEO since 1998, so I've sort of seen it since its infancy to what it's like now, and I sort of can see the patterns of how things are changing. One thing that has sort of remained consistent from back then until now is that Google and Bing and all the search engines use two major ranking factors, which are content and links. So that's the same old, same old. It's been consistent since day one kind of idea that those have been the things used to determine rankings. Content is the text that appears on your website, and links are what other sites are doing when they're linking to you. So it's like links on other people's websites are kind of like recommendations about your website, saying that your site must be a good site because we link to it. So it gives a bit of a rank boost. So those are the same old, same old. Those two major factors have been there pretty much since the inception of Google. Before Google, people didn't really look at links. So that was Google's contribution to search engine optimization. But those two factors represent 90% of what all search is about. There's other factors, but they're all like small factors that come into different, they have different weights that are applied, and they're all very small. Things like site speed and coding of the website, click-through rates and stuff like that all impact ranking as well. But the core of ranking are the content and links. So what has changed, probably you're wondering. Well, there was actually something really cool, and if you asked me about 2-3 years ago, what's really cool about SEO? Well, there was a really nice trick that you could do to not just get better rankings, but get better click-through on your rankings. So it was called authorship. And authorship, what it would do is you could put a little snippet of code into your website, and it basically associate any content that you write with your name. And it was actually through Google Plus and through your website. So what you could do is basically say, hey, I wrote this. And if you did that, and you could post it on just only on your own site, but other sites as well, anytime you posted something and that post came up in the search results, your picture would appear next to it. So what would happen is the search results would have a whole bunch of boring-looking listings, and then it would have this one with a picture next to it. So people would be more likely to click the picture one because, well, it looks a little bit different. It looks a little bit more special. So you could create a nice little picture, and people would more likely click it. So you could get a lot more search clicks coming into your website by using authorship. So it was really great. A lot of SEOs said, hey, we got to do this every time we build a website. Every time we do it for a client, it was something that they really loved using. But the general public didn't embrace it enough. So Google said, hey, nobody's using it except these SEO guys, and they phased it out. That happened just 2 weeks ago. So that's just in August that happened, end of August. So they phased it out in the U.S., and they're going to phase it out in the rest of the world. So sadly, authorship, which was cool, is gone. The next kind of new, but not really new, it depends on how new is new, was Panda. Panda was a kind of a major shift in the way Google looked at one of the major ranking factors, which is content. So content has always been king in terms of Google. Like it always says that, if you have really great content, then you should be rewarded for that. But what people were doing was they were trying to get great content, and they were being a little bit lazy about doing it. So what they would do is they would run a program, which is called a scraper, and they would find great content on other people's websites and then aggregate it on their own website. So that was called scraping. And they would get really good content, and they would create a really great where they would have a site filled with content, very useful content, and all in one place with content. Google hated that. So what it did is it said, you know, if your content is not unique, if you're really just scraping it, we're going to penalize you. And all of a sudden, a lot of these sites that had non-unique content were getting penalized. Another kind of way that this was happening was there was sites where you could post, like a lot of SEOs would do this, post out like a story or article, and you can syndicate it through a whole bunch of websites, like not just one site, but hundreds and hundreds of sites, maybe thousands of sites. And you could build links by doing that. You could create a nice article and then post it out to 1,000 sites. This whole concept of Panda, which looked at duplication of content, killed that. So all of a sudden a lot of SEOs were like, hey, what's going on? Our sites are not ranking anymore because all of a sudden all the links that were on those duplicated pages were devalued. So it really kind of stirred up the industry. It affected about 20% of all search. So it was pretty major update. And there's been many versions of Panda since then. So, you know, they've gotten better at looking at what's duplicate content, how good is the content, what they call thin content, where if you don't have enough text on a page, and if it's maybe like, you know, 100 words, well, that's not considered a good page. They want to have rich content. So when you build your pages now, you have to have like lots of content, like lots of text. So maybe 300 to 500 words on a page, which is a fairly long page. Maybe video inserted, maybe images inserted, make it like a rich multimedia page, and Google will like that more. So that was how Panda came into play. It affected the content on your website, but it also affected content that potentially your links were in. So it was kind of a major shift in the way Google did stuff. The funny thing is, Google killed these scraping sites, but then it came out with the concept of knowledge graph. And it's really the same idea. Knowledge graph uses scraping technology to basically gather information on a topic. So, for example, Albert Einstein, what it will do is it will find images on a whole bunch of websites, and it will also find Wikipedia articles on it, and it will create this nice little section on Google that gives anyone that searches for Einstein really quite a nice little snapshot of who the man was and who was related to him. So you'll see in Snapshot, you know, links to Isaac Newton and Stephen Hawking and Thomas Edison, of course, and Marie Curie. So you'll see that Knowledge Graph does what the scraping sites were doing, which is to create like this whole resource about a topic. The great thing about Google now is, for itself, it really kind of hurts the sites that provide the content, is it's really keeping people within Google. So now I don't have to go to Wikipedia. I don't have to go to these other sites that have prepared this information. I can just stay within Google and read it on Google. And if you start clicking around inside Knowledge Graph, you'll see that you don't really have to leave Google. You can get all that information that you're looking for your school project or whatever to just inside Google. And it's sort of, knowledge graph impacts the guys that actually makes the content, where they no longer are getting that traffic that they used to when people do a search, because now people don't even have to click to them. They can just stay within Google and get all the same information. And it's nicely summarized. That's another thing that Google Knowledge Graph does, is it summarizes this information, so it's easier to get quick understanding of the topic. So Knowledge Graph does exactly what the scrapers did. So it's one of those things where if we do it, it's bad. If Google does it, well, hey, it's great. They're helping society. So ultimately, you'll notice my love of Google. I think that Google's pretty evil creature, but it's one of those ones that we're sort of forced to use. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is Penguin. So I said there's two major ranking factors, content and links. Well, Penguin looks at links. The big thing about the Penguin update was it said, are links good or are they bad, or how are people linking? Is it natural? And natural on the web is sort of one of those gray areas. What is really natural? So what happened was with Penguin, they looked at what sites are linking to you and how are they linking. And what I mean by that is if you have a whole bunch of sites that are associated with gambling or adult industry or those kind of links, and they're pointing to you, and your site's about like dentistry site or real estate website, well, it doesn't really make much sense that these non-related and very spammy related sites are linking to you. Those sites are easy to get links off of, but should they really be pointing to your site? And if you have a lot of those in your what's called your link profile, well, Google is going to say, hey, that's a little bit fishy. And if you have a lot of that and it's a high percentage of your link profile, then you're actually going to get penalized by Google. And your rankings will definitely be hit. And there's two ways that can happen. One is it's an automatic update where Google will actually just use their algorithm, the Penguin algorithm, to detect that your profile is not natural and penalize you for it. The other way it happens is they'll look at the top ranked sites on Google for any particular keyword, and they do it pretty broad. And they'll say, okay, why is this site ranked number one for this keyword? And they will look at the links pointing to that site and manually say, hey, these are not really good links. And they'll look at the pages where they're linked from. Remember how I was saying back in the day you could create one article and post it out onto 1,000 sites? Well, you would actually look at that kind of thing and say, well, is this really a good article? Why is it being posted out on so many sites? You'd look at that kind of article, that kind of link, and say, okay, is it a good link or not? And penalize you for it manually. So you'd have two types of penalties appearing. One is an automatic one, where you're being penalized. You might not even know why, or you might not even know that you're being penalized. And the other is if you're using Google Webmaster Tools, which I recommend people use, they would actually tell you, hey, we're penalizing you, and we've done so manually, and it's because we see suspicious links pointing to your website. So that's one of the ways that they look at you. There are two of the ways. The other thing that they would look at is not just who is linking to you, but how are they linking to you. So if I constantly link to somebody with the same keyword, it used to be a really good thing. For example, way back in the days of George Bush, there was a thing called the Google bomb. People did a sort of internet protest of George Bush, and what they did is they linked to the White House website with the words "miserable failure," and they did it over and over and over again. So what happened was Google, loving links and interpreting links, saw that that keyword was associated with the White House website, so it ranked number 1 for the keyword "miserable failure." So with Penguin, that kind of thing can't happen as much because it wouldn't be considered natural. If there's millions of links that are using that, it wouldn't. It's not natural how that would happen. That seems very artificial to Google. So nowadays, when you create your backlinks, if you're creating your backlinks, which Google always frowns upon, but we all have to do, you have to make it look natural, which is a percentage will be what's called a make it link, which is a link to your website address as the anchor text, which would be like, www.mywebsite.com as the link pointing to your website. Whereas that's one thing you do, and then you would have like my business as another link to your website or your name. But then you would also have a percentage, a smaller percentage, much smaller percentage, which would be the keywords that would point to your website. So the percentages are like, it's like roughly 5 to 10% are keyword related. So they basically are forcing you to build a lot more links to get the same impact that you could when you could bomb keywords, where you could build a whole bunch of links with the keyword. Well, you can't do that anymore. You have to build it as a percentage. And you have to build percentages of the keywords. So you can't just have it all being one keyword. You have to have it maybe 10 to 15 keywords. And you try to mix it up a bit. And you mix in these business ones or name recognition ones or product-orientated ones where they're not really useful. You also mix in the click here's, the read mores to make it look natural, because people use that when they normally link out to you. So you mix all those together and you can make what's called a natural profile. And it's funny nowadays, like you can actually see people that are artificially creating natural profiles where it's so to the actual score. If it's supposed to be 5%, they're right on that 5%. So it's so unnatural, natural. It's kind of hilarious. But that's what search has become, that you have to fall within these thresholds. But the funny thing is, with Penguin, is because now they're looking at links and they can actually penalize you for it. Well, there's now the whole shady element of building links, where if you see a competitor above you and you don't like the fact that they're above you, you can say, hey, I'll just build a whole bunch of crappy links to them. And there's really great tools to build crappy links. So what you do is you just say, I don't like that competitor. I'll build a whole bunch of crappy links with the keyword that I don't want them to rank for. And you just spam out those links. And you can easily build 100,000 million links within a few minutes to that competitor, and their site will just get annihilated on the rankings. So the site owners are now in the situation, well, like I just had like a client that had this issue where they didn't build any links, they didn't do anything unnatural, and they got penalized. Because what was happening is people were just building links. They're actually naturally building links that were considered spammy. And it actually happened with my own site, which is so sad. It makes me very sad, where I write about SEO. And so what happens is I write some really good articles, and people actually like my stuff, which is kind of interesting to me. And because I am very popular, actually I was one of the top 10,000 sites in India. I know that doesn't sound great, but it is pretty cool to be within that ranking of Indian sites that Indians view. I was one of the top, most popular sites in India for my content. So what was happening was all these Indian SEOs were linking to my my website and linking to my content, thinking that it was really great. And a lot of these Indian SEO companies are very spammy. They'll have a whole bunch of spammy links pointing to them. So what happens is Google says, well, hey, Alan's site, my site, is spammy because it has all these spammy people linking to it, even though it's happening naturally. So the funny thing is this whole Penguin update, which looks at links, can actually falsely determine somebody is spamming, even when they're doing something that supposedly Google likes, which is to build natural links and to build links based on the fact that you have good content. So it's kind of ironic that you can get actually hurt naturally from Google. So what you have to do now is you have to do what's called a link cleanup, where you basically monitor who is linking to you, and then you use Google's disavow tool, which is to say to Google, hey, I know I have all these links pointing to me, but please ignore them because I never created them and I don't trust them. So it's created a whole craziness where you have to be constantly worried about who's linking to you and if they're a good site. So that's Penguin. And the last big kind of new cool stuff that's happened recently is the Pigeon update. The Pigeon update, it looks at localization. And it basically tries to use things that are not easily gamed by the system. So I can pretend that I'm somewhere, but with Pigeon, it tries to interpret more factors. So what it will do is it will look at what areas are linking to you, where your Google local is, what address is on your website. It will look at a whole bunch of factors to determine really where you are. That way it can say, okay, local sites should rank better locally. It's a way of producing better results for them, that they can say that, okay, this guy, he says he's Toronto, but is he really Toronto? So they'll look at a whole bunch of different factors in order to determine that. They'll look at your Google Places. They'll look at your actual registration, where you actually registered your domain, what your business is, where it's registered, what contact information is on your website, what language do you use on your website. Are you using the local expressions and spellings of words? And if you're not, then are you truly from that area? So it tries to use a whole bunch of factors that are less easily gamed by the system, and that way it can better provide local results. So yeah, those are the new things that have happened. But the good thing about SEO, to kind of go back to the same old, is really things haven't changed much. There's all this stuff that has changed, and people get freaked out by it, where content gets changed, links get changed, but it really is about content and links. At the end of the day, despite all the crazy stuff that's happened, it's really about those two factors. So if you do things the right way, build your content the right way, build your links somewhat naturally, you can still get benefits on Google. And I believe that those two major ranking factors it's not something that's going to end tomorrow. So yeah, I hope this has been educational, and this is SEO Now.
Thank you very much. It's always good, and I like the way that you summed that up. It gave us a lot more hope, I think. just before we stopped the recording, I thought that was hilarious. I love that Google loves animals so much, as you pointed out earlier with the pigeons and the penguins and pandas. And I guess really to boil it down, for authorship, what I heard is the so what? Well, it doesn't really matter as much who writes it. For the panda, just never duplicate any content ever is really what I'm hearing, and then really great examples on the links being natural. So that was great. And now we're going to open it up